Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back here with the Will You Stop podcast. As always, my name is Brandon. I'm here with Avi.
Not much. Interesting week this week. I have to say it's the first time in quite a while I was a bad boy and literally watched nothing with wrestling. I watched a couple of clips on YouTube or the internet, Instagram or Facebook, but honestly, I really paid no attention to it. There's just nothing going on right now that I really paid attention to. I think the only thing that I'm even looking at right now is the whole Bray Wyatt vignette thing, because honestly, it's the only thing that I'm just kind of interested to see where it goes. Otherwise, I mean, there's no feuds. There's just really nothing going on with this product right now.
It might be the most boring time in WWE that I can ever remember. It is literally like an episode of Seinfeld where it's just a whole bunch of nothing. There is nothing going on.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, listen, Vince made it where we're accustomed to entertainment, right? He always said, we're not a wrestling federation, we're an entertainment company. And right now, there's literally not one angle that I'm interested in.
You know what? I think they could take a really good look at television, especially at Game of Thrones, and maybe they might get some sort of ideas on how to build a story. I'm not saying make an angle based on anything from Game of Thrones. It's bad enough we already have the Viking Warriors or whatever they're called this week. I'm talking about the fact that on this past week's Game of Thrones, well, I take back last week's Game of Thrones, they actually went back to something that occurred in episode 1. You're talking almost 10 years of television. And Vince can't remember what's going on week to week, let alone 10 years ago.
Speaking of Game of Thrones, I loved last week's episode. Actually, I'm reading a lot of negative feedback from that episode. I was a little surprised. People are complaining that it was too dark or whatnot. That was the point. It was supposed to scare the crap out of you and keep you on the edge of your seat. I thought that was one of the most, how shall I say, I'm lost for the word right now, but it really was like almost like a nervous feeling throughout the episode. You didn't know who was about to die. You know, the last season of a show is funny. It's like, you know, when you get to the last season of any show, you kind of expect something major to happen. And it's almost like a nerve. Like I remember the last season of Sopranos. It's almost like, okay, who's going to die this season? And it's almost like a nervous feeling. I remember watching last week's episode, you know, it would get dark and it would come back to the battle and stuff like that. And Melisandre shows up out of nowhere. I mean, the last time we saw her was what, like a season and a half ago? And she just pops in the middle of this battle out of nowhere. Thank you for joining us. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a great episode. I can't wait for this week's episode. It's really almost depressing the show is actually going to end, because honestly, I think this show has at least 4 or 5 more seasons at 10 episodes where they could easily pull that off. So it's actually, this is one of those shows where it's going to end and it's going to end too soon. I kind of feel like, you know, a lot of times shows kind of run their course where you kind of get to the end and it's like, okay, it's about like Oz, for instance. Oz was a great show. By the time you got to the last season, it was kind of like, okay, now we're getting a little ridiculous. And I feel like a lot of shows kind of went down that path. But
Gotham was like that.
Gotham was just bad the last 2 seasons. Honestly, it was just, they had the right formula the first season, the second season. Then it just kind of started to go downhill. But I feel like Game of Thrones is one of those shows where it's nowhere even near getting to the point of ridiculousness. I think it's an amazing show. Probably my favorite show of all time. I was thinking about it, you know, who my favorite, and I've always been a fan of Cersei. As you know, I always root for the villains in every single movie or whatnot. I find their story more interesting. But I got to say, in the history of television, I think Arya's story is the greatest story ever told as far as a character arc goes. From where she started as like this little tomboy that nobody really paid attention to in season 1 to where she is now, which is like basically a badass assassin. I mean, her story arc is amazing.
That's the point I was trying to make. You have a 10-year story arc on a character. We can't even get a freaking 3-week story arc on a character with WWE.
Well, I'm not worried about WWE at this point. Honestly, that WWE right now is so disappointing to me. Honestly, I'm just waiting for AEW to pop up and see what they have to offer, because there's literally nothing in WWE that's even remotely interesting. But back to Game of Thrones. I love Arya's character. Who's your favorite character on the show?
Oh, I love Arya. I think Arya is my favorite. Tyronian. I can never say his name right. He's always been my favorite. That little guy. Sansa's getting on my nerves a little.
Sansa's always kind of been an annoying character. She's had moments where it's like, okay, she's pretty cool. Like last season when they had that pseudo trial of Littlefinger, I thought that was probably Sansa's probably best work. But I think the whole point of her character is to be a little bit of annoyance. But yeah, Arya, I'd be hard pressed to find anybody who doesn't like that character. As a matter of fact, if she winds up on the throne when this is all said and done, I'll be happy if the show ends like that, to be honest with you. I love her character. Her character's awesome.
I thought it was funny that Dany and Jon Snow were more concerned with the fact that he's the rightful heir to the throne than the fact that you're fucking your aunt.
Oh, that was hilarious.
They weren't worried about that part. No, they're just worried about the throne.
No, I'm fucking my little nephew, but it's okay. I just got to get my hands on the throne. But that's definitely something that I find it funny that she just sat there just dumbfounded, overlooking the whole thing. It's interesting. I was reading.
It just shows exactly what she's looking at. All she cares about is that throne. She doesn't give a damn about anything anymore.
Yeah, it was funny. I was reading this fan theory about how the White Walkers are actually good guys. It's an interesting theory that came out where the Children of the Forest were actually the bad guys, and the Three-Eyed Raven is somehow related to them and going through Bran to take over the world. And the White Walkers were actually coming down to save the world from the Children of the Forest, and that's the theory going around now, that the White Walkers were actually the good guys. Not sure how zombies are good guys, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless. But either way, listen, like I said, I love Game of Thrones. That show to me has got plenty of legs still left in it. It's almost one of those things where it's almost like you're happy it's ending because ending on that real strong note, but you're sad it's ending because, damn, that show still has a lot more to go.
Well, they're working on prequels and spin-offs and all this stuff. So it's not like the world of Game of Thrones is going to be gone for good.
Well, from what I understand, the spin-off got canceled, so we'll see what happens. Listen, anything that HBO turns its back on, you have to assume Netflix is probably going to jump on. It's that kind of battle. I wouldn't say they're in a war, but you can assume that if HBO says no, Netflix might just say yes, because Netflix, from what I understand, they want to put out something like 200 shows by the end of this year. Which is
you know what I find amazing? You remember back in the day where when a TV show got canceled, that was it. It was done. Now it's jumping to other networks. Everything gets brought back. It's like amazing in this day and age how nothing, like in comic books, nothing stays dead. No characters stay dead because they just come back on a different network.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be a show got canceled, it was goodbye. Now a show gets canceled and it winds up on, either 4 or 7 if it was on Channel 2, or it winds up on USA or on Netflix. It's interesting.
And now we got Hulu and Netflix. It's like so many different options now. So it's, there's a lot of interesting things going to be going on with television.
So YouTube, I heard, is going to stop charging, which I'm fine with that because I'm jumping around. I got to find somebody else with a free month for next year's Cobra Kai series. I liked season 2. I'm getting a lot of people saying that season 2 wasn't that great. I liked season 2 up until the last episode, to be honest with you. I liked that last episode ending with the big brawl, and I mean, you got Miguel basically half dead at this point. A little ridiculous. I liked where they were going until that last episode.
Yeah, it was just too unrealistic for me, that brawl in the school.
Yeah,
I mean, no other teacher except for 1 or 2 people were around. There was no cops called the entire time. Nothing. I mean, something should have been stopped the minute that Tori went into that freaking and beat up the announcer person. That should have been like right there.
Yeah, like we're school security, we're the teachers. It was a little ridiculous. I guess Allie will have a part in season 3 now. That should be interesting. A little disappointed Mike Barnes didn't show up. That guy lied to us. That the actor who played Mike Barnes said he was going to be in this season, and he hasn't bothered showing up. As a matter of fact, I was convinced that Tori was actually going to be Mike Barnes' daughter.
It may not be over. Season 3's coming up. That may happen.
That's true. That's true. They didn't talk about her parents yet. That'd be very interesting if she winds up being Mike Barnes' daughter. So maybe he wasn't lying after all. But overall, yeah, I liked it. Listen, I love the show. Anytime you could bring back something nostalgic out of the 80s and bring to light what happened to everybody and what they're doing now and stuff like that, it's always a good time.
Yeah, I took a little longer than normal to watch the second season, but it took me like 4 days. But I got through
Now,
it, and I thought it was enjoyable.
I banged it out that night. I started watching at midnight, and it was one of those things where it was like, all right, I'll watch one more episode and go to bed, watch that episode. And I was like, screw it. I'm just going to finish this. Finished it up like a 5:45 in the morning. I didn't care. Honestly, it was fun to watch overall. Like I said, I wish they would do more stuff like that, take stuff from the 80s or 90s and kind of just bring us back up to date. That'd be fun to watch. But you saw Endgame, right?
I did see Endgame. I saw it twice, actually.
Yeah, I have to say I've not gotten around to seeing it yet. I'm going to try and see it tonight, I think, or tomorrow possibly. I've heard good things about it, so I'm actually looking forward to it. It was
If you
fun.
could see it, I would suggest if you can.
What'd you say?
I would suggest you see it in IMAX if possible.
Yeah, I'm definitely. Yeah, I usually see most of my movies in IMAX. It's actually funny. They were saying, people are flipping out because of all the spoilers put online and whatnot. And there's actually the study came out and said that people enjoy movies 76% more when they know what happens at the end, which I find funny, to be honest with you.
Nah, not me. I avoid spoilers at all costs. I hate people who spoil things, especially something as big as Endgame. It's been building up for 11 years with the MCU. So this was special. I will say that. And I'm not trying to hype it up, but this movie was really good and really special, and it wrapped everything up. Every single storyline they've been building for 11 years throughout the MCU. If it's going to end, it's ending. If it's continuing, they gave you a new path it's going on. So I think you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Civil War. I liked the last one that came out. That was pretty good. So I'm sure I'm going to like this one. Civil War, for some reason, it never read. I don't know. There was something just unenjoyable about it. I think Ant-Man was probably the highlight of Civil War for me.
Yeah, he had his moments. That was definitely he grew into his own shoes, no pun intended on that one.
Oh man. So yeah.
I have a question for you. What do you think about what's going on with Chris Jericho? And let me back it up. Yesterday at an indie show, him and Kenny Omega had a huge angle. And then this morning they released a video that he'll be challenging Okada at Dominion for New Japan Pro Wrestling.
I don't know. I feel like Jericho is almost like his own entity now. He can show up anywhere, anytime. They're going to throw him in a match. Like I said, we discussed Jericho before. I've always maintained Jericho is one of those guys. You can put him in a match, put him in an angle. It's always going to be entertaining. He's almost like an independent contractor now to a degree. He's showing up here. He's showing up there. He's putting on decent shows, from what I understand. Like I said, didn't pay much attention to wrestling this week. I'm kind of just bummed out at this point with the whole entire business as a whole. You're kind of at a point now where your number one federation in America, or North America for that matter, is really not doing much for us. I mean, are there any angles in WWE right now?
Nothing Bray Wyatt's gimmick that's building. That's honestly the most interesting thing they got working, like you said earlier.
Yeah,
otherwise it's just nothing. It's horrible.
Right. And you kind of have to blame Vince in a sense where you've basically raised us on the aspect or the notion or the theory that this is not wrestling, that it's entertainment. Okay, that's great. Where's the entertainment? And I'll be honest, to go along with that, the matches haven't been that great lately. The roster almost looks like they're like half-assing it in the ring half the time.
Do you think it's a matter of being burnt out from so much stuff going on between WrestleMania and then so many hours of television each week? Do you think it's just a matter of burnout between the talent, burnout with creative, or they're just like lost?
I don't know. Listen, I don't know about burnout, man. You got guys on the road 300 days a year at one point, knocking out 2 or 3 shows a day. So burnout's not an excuse. I told you a couple of times we've spoken before about this. If these guys are burning out now, let's really think about it. Outside of Randy Orton, a lot of these guys haven't been wrestling all that long, at least in the WWE. So burning out wise, what are they doing? Doing a show on Monday, and then your SmackDown guys go Tuesday, and they're having house shows, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yep.
That's really not a lot of a workload if you think about it. Back in the day, guys were doing 3 shows a day sometimes, and then driving, 100, 200 miles to their next show. So burnout, I don't know about that. I think as fans, we're trained to watch wrestling a certain way. I think for us, there has to be a story. There has to be a hook. There has to be a reason why these two guys or these four guys, if it's a tag team or what have you, are in the ring. If you take two guys and throw them in the ring for no rhyme or reason, just because you're taking two guys and throwing them in the ring, it's not going to do anything for us unless it's a squash match and you're trying to put a monster over or somebody else over. I think that's one of the reasons why New Japan is popular, quote unquote, as it is. I don't see it ever taking off here in the U.S. because you're not giving us stories. You're giving us matches. You're giving us great matches sometimes, according to Meltzer, 7-star matches. But to me, when you're a North American fan, if you have a great feud going, if you want to go by the whole star theory of how many stars you want to give a match, you have a great feud going the fans are really into, where both sides of the equation are really being felt, you're already starting out with 3 stars. The rest of it's just putting together a decent 15, 20-minute match, and you're going to get your 5 stars just based on that alone. Perfect examples, Bret Hart against Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13. Before they even stepped in the ring, those guys were already at 3 stars. Just for the simple fact that they were running a program now since going back to Survivor Series. And now here we are at WrestleMania, and they're still running the same program. And what I liked about that program, if you think about it, is that they had their match at Survivor Series. They feuded for a little bit, backed off a little bit, but they were always in each other's rearview mirror, so to speak. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's where I think you have to go with feuds a lot of times. And you're just not – listen, there were no feuds right now. I mean, they had Seth Rollins and AJ Styles with a contract signing. That I remember watching this week. Okay, you have two faces with no legitimate heat having a contract signing. How interesting could that possibly be?
And it's hot-shotted. They had no issues. He wins it 2-3 ways, and then he wins against Corbin, and then all of a sudden he's got some issue. It's just going around in a circle down the drain, and it's like got 0 point.
Well,
it's one thing to just have a match. It should be, you have to have a story to lead to the match.
You're breaking up again. My thing is this. Why are these two guys in the middle of a ring having a contract signing when there's no heat between them? What is the
exactly?
I just don't understand. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And if you look at it, I mean, what are your big feuds on SmackDown now? Kevin Owens and Kofi. All right, at least they have legitimate heat between the two of them. Kevin Owens turned on him. But there's no legitimate heat between AJ and Rollins, and I'm fine with, like I said last time, I'm fine with those two going at it if you want to spread out over a couple of pay-per-views. But honestly, what are your other angles right now?
I legitimately cannot think of one off my head. I would actually have to Google it and go through the roster to try to figure it out. Otherwise, there are no angles going on. What, Roman Elias has some sort of issue because he punched Vince? And then Shane got involved. Shane and Miz have a thing going on. That's the only thing I could think of off my head right now.
So now I start thinking to myself, okay, Vince, you've now raised us for the entertainment value. Where is first of all, one could make the case that there's no angles because they used the superstar shakeup and they got to put things together. And I'm fine with that. Superstar shakeup was what, 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You've done nothing since. You've given us a couple of vignettes with Bray, which they're interesting because you want to see where it's going. I don't think the vignettes themselves are interesting. They're kind of just there. But I think I'd like to see where they go with this, which is where my interest lies. But otherwise, I mean, I can't think of a time in my life of watching wrestling where you legitimately have no angles. AEW is on the way. Great. What's the card right now for Double or Nothing? They haven't announced it yet.
Yeah, the main event is Alpha versus Omega 2. Kenny Omega against Jericho.
Okay, that's fine. They have a legitimate feud. There's some legitimate heat there. What else you got?
You got for the AAA tag team titles, believe it or not, you're gonna have the Young Bucks against the Lucha Brothers.
Okay.
Pac, the former Neville Page.
All right.
You got Cody versus Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah, okay. Go on.
Did you happen to see Cody's promo he released this week, or you didn't get a chance to see that?
I didn't see it. What was it about?
it was basically, I love my brother, but I have to kill the Attitude Era. So they're using Dustin as the epitome of the Attitude Era, and Cody as the next generation. And it's not that he has to basically. It's Old Yeller. He has to take his brother to the back and put $2 in his head.
Yeah, and wrestling is really in a weird state right now. I just want to listen. I can't judge AEW obviously at this point. We got to see where it goes. We have to see what kind of style they're bringing to the table. You know, are they going to be just another WWE typical slow plotting, oversell, undersell, let's get to a spot fest with 3 minutes to go in the match type style? Are they going to try to bring that New Japan style here? You know, I like to see where they go before I judge them. But at this point, you know, we've been raised on the notion of wrestling being entertainment now for the better part of, what, 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
Longer, 35 years now. I mean, Vince takes over the WWE in 84. So you're talking now it's been 35 years since we've been kind of raised on the notion of entertainment. I mean, where's the entertainment? Yeah, you're only going to get so far in a match as the angle around it. And I keep repeating this. I'm beating it to death. I get it. But that's the North American fan. So unless the plan for Vince is to get away from that, which I doubt, but who the hell knows what goes through his head at this point? I mean, if that's where we're heading, that's where we're heading. We'll get used to it eventually. But, you know, it's called WWE for a reason, obviously.
Well, let me ask you about this, because there's conspiracy theories in the IWC right now. I want to get your opinion on it. Dean Ambrose or John Moxley or Mox, and this video he released an hour after his contract ended. Rumors are that it was paid by WWE, shot back in October, and that this is a whole angle, and they're going to repackage Dean Ambrose, throw away 8 years of a character that they've had and owned, and start from scratch with Mox. So I want to get your opinion. Do you feel this is a swerve by WWE, that Ambrose has never left and it's all a giant angle? Or do you think this is just something that let him see what he can do outside on his own, see if he can make himself a bigger name, then we'll bring him back. He'll have a bigger name because he'll be more, quote unquote, worldwide known? I mean, he lives in Vegas. 3 weeks is Double or Nothing in Vegas. I mean, what's your take on the Dean Ambrose situation?
I mean, you're going to repackage him as Mox. That just sounds ridiculous. I mean, if that's the case, then why go through the trouble of releasing him or having him give his contract? I don't know. Honestly, I was never into him. I watched the video. There's really nothing about it that says to me, wow. I mean, who knows? If it's the case they're bringing it back and repackaging him, okay, great. So you're taking another character you just basically spent 7 or 8 years building just to tear it down to build it up into something else. So now we're going to do music. Might as well just repackage everyone on the roster if that's the case. You know, if you're at
But then it goes back to what you said last week or the week before. So what? You bring him under a different name. If he doesn't evolve his style and what he's showing you in the ring, you can call him anything you want. It's still going to be the same Dean Ambrose we've seen for the last 8 years.
I mean, what would be the purpose of even repackaging Dean Ambrose at this point? I mean, he's not a guy that everyone just loves so much, number one. Number two, he's not that interesting. I mean, Bray Wyatt has an interesting character. So there's a lot you can do with that character. Dean Ambrose is just, you know, a regular guy. What more can you really do with this character? Listen, they've repackaged guys like The Undertaker, so it's not unheard of to repackage someone. You know, Triple H I wouldn't say Triple H got repackaged. He more just like morphed into what he became.
He evolved.
Yeah, that was an evolution of a character. Taker was I guess, kind of sort of repackaged for a minute. I know Vince actually hated that. He just wanted to be Undertaker forever. Yeah, I just I don't know. You're repackaging Mox, and what are you going to do with him, though?
He's just going to do the same thing he was doing.
The guy's walking around with barbed wire wrapped around his fist and bleeding. You're a PG federation. What are you going to do with that? Are you not going to be PG anymore? I wish they wouldn't. But you know what? Actually, it was funny. I was thinking about this earlier today. I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to get into, and that actually reminds me of something I wanted to touch on. A lot of people blame the lack of story, lack of energy, what you want to call it, on the current WWE product. That since they've gone PG, really has gone downhill. And that was around 2009. I believe, what was it, July of 2009, I think they went PG, somewhere around there.
Something about that.
You know what? There's plenty of shows on TV that are quote unquote rated PG that do pretty damn good ratings and tell us pretty good stories. CBS, NBC, and ABC and Fox have plenty of shows with no cursing, no nudity that really are PG if you think about it. And they do pretty well if you think about it, right or wrong.
Correct.
So
I'll give you a good example. Big Bang Theory, 12 years. No cursing, no sex, no violence. It's TV PG. To me, that's a cop-out of people just looking for nostalgia of the Attitude Era. That, it's because it's PG, because it's PG. It doesn't matter what the rating is. It was PG back in the 80s with Hulk Hogan. It was, you know what I mean? It was, and they did good. But continue with your thought.
Yeah, you get to a point now where it's like, okay, you want to blame the lack of blood or whatever. I'm not buying it, because if you think about it, like I said, you have plenty of shows on TV that are PG that are doing perfectly fine. In the 80s, it was PG, it was doing perfectly fine. You're at a point now where ratings are down to 25% from this time last year.
Yep, and 20% from the start of the show to the end. It starts 20% higher, and by the time they get to hour 3, they lose 20% of their audience.
Well, think about it logically. Listen, it's a 3-hour show with not a lot going on, and you have a shitload of commercials in those first hour and a half. It's hard to sit through Raw. It really is. I rarely get home in time to watch the beginning of Raw. Happens every now and then, but most of the time I usually get home right around 8:45 to 9 o'clock, and I'll pop it on while I eat. And honestly, there's nothing that takes me away from my food to watch on there. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, to sit through a 3-hour program with commercials, no less. If Raw was commercial free, it'd be a lot easier to sit through. Basically, be a weekly pay-per-view if you think about it. But you want to put commercials on there. And for 3 hours with commercials, and you're not giving us much in the way of matches, and your angles are non-existent, that is a tough show to sit through. But I'm going to go back even further. I'm going to bring up something even more interesting. I was listening to Disco and Conan's podcast. You ever listen to those two?
I haven't. Just the clips you've sent me.
They bring up a couple of interesting points. The WWE, as far as numbers go, you haven't had a lot of new fans over the last 10 years. Where it's like your leftover fans that have always watched, your mainstream, your main fans, obviously, and a couple of add-ins. When you're down 25% from 1 year, that means you're not bringing in anybody. That means you're losing people. And in a sense, I really have to wonder if this is going to hurt AEW, because, listen, you're trying to get on Turner right now. Our Turner executive is going to look right now at the Fox deal and NBC Universal deal. What both companies are shelling out $1 billion for WWE programming. Okay, for programming to work on TV, they have to have advertisers. If I'm an advertiser and I look at WWE and I look at the fact their ratings are down 25% over the last year, and you're a startup wrestling company, I'm not going to give you a good break or a good deal on how much TV time you're going to put my product on for. You know what I'm saying? It's if you're a fledgling product and you're killing it rating wise and killing it everything else wise, I may cut you a deal because I realize so many people are watching you. But if I'm coming into an industry as an advertiser that's losing 25% viewership over the past year, I'm probably going to give you a hard time. So in a sense, AEW was supposed to have their TV deal squared away by now. There may be a reason it's being held up right now.
There's definitely going to be, the shit does run downhill. And if WWE is at the top and they're so shitty, it is going to run downhill, like you said, to AEW or anyone else trying to get a major TV deal.
Let me ask you this question. We're watching wrestling a long time. When was the last time we saw it this bad? Or I won't even say this bad, this uninteresting.
93 maybe.
But you know what's funny about that? I was thinking the same thing. 92 was okay. 93, 94 is bad for WWE and for WCW. But I'll tell you what, as bad as it was, the in-ring stuff didn't lose its shine. You know what I'm saying? Like, the botches these days are off the chain, it seems like. I feel like every episode of Raw and SmackDown is just a botch fest. I mean, Lacey Evans was all over the place this past week. I just saw the clips of it. And that's the one thing that really bothers me the most are the botches. All right, you don't have any angles. You don't have any good angles. The product is boring. It's definitely a downtime. But when I watch the matches, and the matches are literally exposing the business because of it's just a giant botch fest, that bothers me.
I mean, it goes back. We've discussed this, and I'll ask you this now that we're on like this public forum. You think that it being so scripted has an effect on how the matches are because you're trying to remember A, B, C, D. You have to do these spots, so you're not concentrating and just relying on basically your instincts that brought you to WWE.
Well, if you're memorizing, think about it. They're not just having one match. They're having their matches on house shows. They can practice these matches backstage, so they're not going into these matches cold. So if they're scripted and they're having these same matches at house shows, they should have it down pat by the time they get on TV. If you think about it.
I mean, yeah, we know that it's live. You're in front of people. Things are going to happen. Nothing's perfect. But yeah, just it's too much. It's like extra. It's just extra anymore.
It's exposing the business. I mean, one of the worst botches I've seen recently was the Lacey Evans Natalya botch, where Lacey Evans tries to do a kip up or something, and she falls on her ass, stands up, and her and Natalya stand there staring at each other for like 6 seconds.
Yeah, that was at the Royal Rumble.
What was that?
It was at the Royal Rumble.
No, I'm talking about this past week. Natalya Lacey. She does some kind of kip up or whatnot. They sit there staring at each other for like 6 seconds. And I'm thinking to myself, thank you for totally exposing the business right now. Like, it's your job as a performer is not to expose the business. And you know what? Botches have been around forever. But if you look at it, some guys are really good at covering up better than others. I was actually watching a match today. It was the three-way dance from the first ECW pay-per-view with Terry Funk, Stevie Richards, and Sandman. And listen, Sandman was probably half drunk most of the time he wrestled anyway. But those guys, there was a few botches that actually hit the internet over the years, but they covered them up well enough. There's something to be said for professionalism in the ring. Okay, you fucked up. Cover it up. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has perfect matches. But when somebody botches, and now Natalya, who's a veteran for how many years now, from the Hart family of all places, doesn't know how to cover it up, and they're sitting there staring each other down in the ring, like, oh, what do we do next? That's embarrassing as a fan. How could that not bother you?
You're right. I didn't see all of Raw this week. I totally missed that match. So I thought we were discussing her debut in the Royal Rumble where she missed a moonsault and she tried to do that. She should stop trying to do a kip up because obviously that's the second time she can't do it. Don't try doing something you can't physically do because it just looks horrible.
Well, listen, like I said, I have no problem with somebody trying things. I just cover it up better if you're going to botch it. But here's my thing. You can state the case that it's so rehearsed that it throws them off. But if that's the case, think about it. If you do something over and over and over again, shouldn't you just have it down pat by the time you get live on TV?
It's true. That's true.
I mean, I can guarantee that Lacey Evans and Natalya probably wrestled on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this week, if not at least one of those days. So by the time you get to Raw, you should be good to go.
Well, I want to then say that falls upon Triple H and NXT if this is how bad she is and she's on the main roster.
Oh, listen, I've been saying for years now that these people coming up from NXT are not great in the ring. I don't know what goes on down there. I don't know what the trainers are teaching them, but they're coming up and they look sloppy a lot of times. I mean, like bad sloppy. Like there's sloppy and there's bad sloppy. To me, sloppy just means you're sloppy and you need some work. Bad sloppy, you're exposing the business. That's the issue I'm having with this, is that when you expose the business, it just looks bad. Like there are some people who are really making the business look bad lately.
Who would you? Well, quick list, short list. Lazy Evans. Who else?
Bacha,
Mm-hmm.
Bailey, uh, Mustafa Ali, or Ali, whatever they call him now. A lot of the 205 Live guys.
How about? I got one for you, Braun Strowman.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah. He should just be a big bruising animal who just slams people. He should be doing nothing else but that. You know, I mean, let's not give you another one. And I like the guy. He comes up very sloppy a lot of times. Elias.
I think his problem is he doesn't get enough in-ring work because they're too busy with his character and playing the guitar. I mean, until he moved to SmackDown, when was the last time he even wrestled a match, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. But I mean, the overall product is just, I don't know if Vince has to have a backstage, meeting or whatnot. I was actually listening to a Bruce, Something to Wrestle With podcast with Bruce and Conrad. And Bruce made mention of a time around 2004 where Vince actually called a talent-only meeting where it was him and just the wrestlers, about a 45-minute meeting where Vince told them, slow it down, tell a story, stop taking unnecessary high spots. Maybe Vince needs to do that again because these guys are not telling a story in the ring anymore.
The psychology is gone. It's non-existent.
Well, I think the issue becomes is that, you don't have angles. You're throwing in these cold matches, so to speak, and the matches all follow the same routine, Both guys get in a whole bunch of slow plotting offense for the first 10 minutes. Then you have 3 to 4 minutes of high spot up the high spot up the high spot till somebody hits one last high spot and you get a pin. I can probably sit here and watch a match and literally call it before it happens at this point.
It's funny, for all the years that everyone gave crap to John Cena and his 5 moves of doom, that's basically every WWE match now. It's 5 moves of doom that you can call the match and know how it's going to go for the most part.
I'll take a John Cena match these days compared to the other crap we're getting out there. And it's like, listen, I told you about it. I call this the NXT era. This is really the era of the NXT wrestler. And, man, they are letting me down.
I mean, I think Triple H said that 85% of the current main roster came through NXT. So yeah.
It's really something to think about.
Hey, what about your opinion on all this hoo-ha going on with Leo Rush and him basically being told he hasn't paid dues and he's disrespecting the elder statesman in the locker room?
Who did he disrespect exactly and how?
Supposedly, from what Mark Henry has said, is that he's supposed, as one of the younger guys, he's supposed to be waiting Gorilla for when they come back with bottles of water, and he feels that he shouldn't be anyone's errand boy because he's that good. They offered him a 5-year contract extension, and he wants double the money they offered him because he's quote-unquote that good. You got a guy for 12 years, Kushida, who's taking the ring, putting it up and taking it down, and Leo Rush is going on how he shouldn't, as a black man, he shouldn't be handing out bottles of water.
I mean, I don't know. It does sound a little ridiculous to have anybody handing out bottles of water. Since when is that a rule in wrestling? I mean, when did that ever happen? I never even heard of that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if he really is being disrespected, then yeah, I would probably say get out of there. But I mean, where's this all coming from? This just popped up out of nowhere. Which veteran did he disrespect exactly? First of all, who on that roster is veteran enough to even get that kind of respect? maybe Randy Orton, who I really don't see bothering with anything that stupid.
Well, I think it all, from what I read, he brought his wife back, and she had some sort of issues with Reby Hardy at WrestleMania weekend, and he's bringing people back without like proper clearance and criteria. They're changing in the actual locker room, like they're using the wrestler's locker room, like his wife and family members and stuff like that.
I mean, that's different. I remember actually, I think Hulk Hogan had a run-in with George Scott, which actually led to George Scott's firing because Hulk Hogan brought a bunch of guys backstage at MSG, and it pissed off George Scott. And obviously, Vince is obviously going to take Hogan's side. That's nothing new to the business. I mean, guys have always brought people backstage and made it, it's gotten a little controversial. Listen, I don't see anything with the guy. If he leaves, if he stays, I mean, what's the big deal, to be honest with you? That's a guy that's very easily replaceable. I mean, he's what? He's a glorified manager at this point.
Not even. They didn't even write him off. He just vanished. Bobby Lashley's been coming out the last 2 weeks by himself. You didn't even get a write-off. Like, write-off TV. They just totally just dropped him.
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to do with him? If he goes to AEW, honestly, what can AEW do with a guy like this? He's a little guy that jumps around. Okay, they're a dime a dozen. Is it that difficult to find a little guy who runs around?
He's actually had, from what I can remember, he's always had this "I'm better than everyone else" attitude. I remember, I think it was a CZW show. It was right before he went to NXT. He was in some sort of ladder match, and they did some huge spot off the top of the ladder, and he completely no-sold it and just got right up because he had signed his NXT contract, and he was just finishing up his dates.
Yeah, I don't know. I was never big on the guy. I mean, to me, he was a glorified manager, and that was about it. I mean, I didn't see anything special with him as far as the way he moves, and I don't know. I honestly don't care for the guy. If he's there, great. If he's not there, does it really make a difference?
Question for you. Cersei, Danny, Jon Snow. Who lives, who dies by the end of the season?
Oh, who the hell even knows? I'm not making any predictions on that one. I have no idea. That show, God only knows how they're going to finish this show up. That's why I said it's one of those shows you watch it with just complete nervous anticipation because you truly have no idea how this show ends up. What was the other thing? I wanted to talk about something else with you. That was kind of my mind from this past week.
Oh, we tackled the Ambrose. We tackled Leo Rush.
Like this,
we tackled WWE and their bad ratings.
I don't know. Is there anything else that's going on this week in wrestling, really? I feel like
it's been a quiet week, actually.
Yeah, I mean, so Sasha's latest, actually, if I understand that she turned down coming back to WWE, and now she's been replaced in the card.
Right. She was supposed to have Dana Brooke's spot in the Money in the Bank ladder match, and she refused to come in. So now they have Dana Brooke in there. So Dana might kill somebody. So good luck, everyone.
Poor Dana Brooke, man. You guys rip her apart.
To me, she falls under the same thing with Lacey Evans. When she first came up, it was too soon. She was too green to come up. I mean, she wasn't someone who was on the indies and then went to NXT. She was a fitness and bodybuilder that they brought in. So she started basically from scratch. Same thing with Lacey Evans. She came out of the army and started from scratch. Those are people that you need to keep down there for 4 to 5 years. Not bring them up after a year and a half because Vince thinks they look pretty.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's at a point now where we're just the overall product is just so piss poor. I mean, what can you honestly say at this point? The in-ring work is shit. The angles are shit. I mean, what can you honestly say at this point about this company? And it's funny because you have these people that I'm reading about saying that AEW is going to be great for WWE because, Vince always does well when he gets off his ass. Let me tell you something. Vince has only gotten off his ass one time, and that was during the war. And I wouldn't say he got off his ass. He basically discovered Stone Cold Steve Austin, discovered Jerry Springer. Mixed the two together, and that's when you got attitude. And plus, ECW didn't hurt either. But, I mean, otherwise, I mean, Vince has not gotten off his ass in years, and what makes anyone think that AEW is going to get him off his ass? You know what
Especially in the first year.
what
I mean,
drives me nuts when people say, "Oh, it'll wake up Vince." How about we say, "Fuck Vince, let's get AEW going." You know, give us a good product. I'd rather just see a damn good product than anything else, to be honest with you. I'd rather see a good wrestling federation. I want to see a good pay-per-view. I want to see a good weekly show. That's what I want to see. I don't care what Vince does.
do you think AEW is going to lose the deal with Turner, or you think they're going to announce it next week as planned?
I have no idea at this point. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't see why they would lose the deal. I mean, why would they lose the deal?
Well, or pay out more, like you were saying earlier about, touching back on the whole, because the shit's running downhill and the ratings are dropping and it's losing the commodity of pro wrestling. Is it going to affect Turner being like, what, maybe we shouldn't, put all this money into this AEW that's unproven?
Well, what's interesting is I was actually listening to this interesting story. Eric Bischoff was telling it, I believe it was, where when Ted Turner comes out to his executives and announces they're going to do Nitro, the way he starts his speech, his executives actually thought he was closing down WCW, and they started high-fiving each other. So wrestling has never been thought of too highly when it comes to TV. So we have to take everything that we hear with a grain of salt. Listen, I hope they get a good TV deal. I hope they go off and running. I hope they make a ton of money, and I hope they become a real viable second federation that we can watch, because honestly, WWE, there's not much to watch there right now.
Oh, here, I have a good one for you. Do you think that Fox is feeling some sort of buyer's remorse right now, or do you think it's too early for that?
No, they haven't even started on TV yet. Why would they feel any remorse? When they start on TV and there's remorseful, I mean, why would they? What reaction would they possibly have right now? There's nothing on their channels.
I'm just talking based on WWE's ratings right now.
Oh, who knows if they're even paying attention to that? We don't know if they're even talking about that. I mean, now you're assuming the guys that have enough time to actually watch it. But come on, would you honestly care what goes on with the product that's on somebody else's television before you get your hands on it? Think about it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm just, you're just trying to take. I know Fox is going to have their hands in the cookie jar once they start in October. So there's going to be a big seismic shift in how that product is shown. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I mean, listen, you're putting $1 billion into something. I'm going to tell you what the fuck you're doing with it. I'm giving you $1 billion of my own money. Yeah, I'm going to have a say in this. Unless you're doing something that's really, really good and you're blowing me away on a weekly basis, fuck you. I'm going to tell you what we're doing. I wouldn't say they're going to tell WWE what they're doing, but they might, what's the word I'm looking for?
Suggest. They may give some suggestions.
A very strong suggestion about what they'd like to see is the best way I think you can look at it, which is expected. I mean, they're pouring a shitload of money into this. You know what? Yeah, $1 billion is a lot of money. If I'm giving you $1 billion, I'm going to have some say. I wouldn't say I'm going to make you do what I tell you to do, but I'm going to suggest it maybe even rather aggressively. Because if I sign you up and now I just lost 25% viewership like you are currently, we're going to have a problem. Because I can tell you right now, Fox is not investing $1 billion in the WWE to lose money. Nobody invests $1 billion to lose money. You're not doing it out of goodwill and charity.
I'm curious how different Raw and SmackDown are going to look once it's like SmackDown is basically Fox and Raw is NBC Universal. I wonder how much, if there's going to be like even just based on the presentation, like from like the camera angles and things of that sort, the sets, if there's going to be a big like difference, it's going to be like night and day.
Listen, what I would love is if they came out to the Fox Sports theme, like the NFL music.
Dun, 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 dun.
That would be cool. That would be cool to hear wrestling coming out to that. That would actually be very fucking cool. Listen, October's a long way to go. We got a lot of ground to cover still before we get there. I mean, you got a pay-per-view in May, June, July, and SummerSlam, and September's pay-per-view you got to get to. And this pay-per-view coming up on May 19th. Is it May 19th?
Yes, May 19th.
Oh, man, I am not pumped up for that one iota. There is literally nothing on that card jumping out at me saying, I mean, what the main event is what Styles against Rollins, which could be a good match, even though there's no story behind it. Obviously, you're going to have Kofi and KO, I assume.
Yep. Looks that way. That's the way they're going.
Anything else been announced?
The two Money in the Bank ladder matches.
All right. Those are usually fair, though.
Becky Lynch is pulling double duty. She's defending both titles. The Raw one against Lacey, and then the SmackDown against Charlotte Flair. And then you got Miz and Shane in a steel cage. Roman against Elias. And the men's Money in the Bank is Strowman, Ricochet, Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, Ali, Finn Balor, Andrade, and Randy Orton.
All right. What is with Ali?
I don't know. I don't know why he's there. I don't know why he's in this mix.
There's no rhyme or reason for him to be involved in anything big right now in WWE. I just don't get it. I don't know where this guy came from, why they're giving him so much of a push. I mean, there's nothing impressive about that. I've never seen him in a match where I was really overly impressed with anything he did.
I don't know what they see in him that they pulled him from 205 Live to give him this push on SmackDown. He, like you said, he hasn't done anything impressive. You know, his first night on SmackDown, they gave him a pin over Daniel Bryan, who was champion at the time. I don't know why. I got nothing on him. I got no reason for it.
He's not even fun to watch. Like, he's a cruiserweight, but he doesn't do anything cruiser. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing about him that I like about this guy. I mean, has he given a promo yet?
Yeah, he's done one of those, handheld camera, cell phone camera things with Chicago in the background because he's from Chicago. How he's fought through the streets to get to here. You know, one of those kind of promos, but it hasn't done anything for me.
I don't know.
Till he showed up, I completely forgot he was still on SmackDown.
Yeah, I don't know why he's getting that kind of a push.
To me, his biggest accomplishment was getting hurt and giving way for Kofi to be WWE champion right now.
Yeah, I like I said, there's nothing about this guy that I look at him and I say, okay, I see anything with. I mean, there's been, I've seen other guys where I didn't see much with them. It's like, it's funny. I was thinking the other day, your top guys of all time and how you could never see them playing. If you would have told me Sterling Golden in 1979 or 1980 was going to become Hulk Hogan and become the biggest star in the history of the business, I mean, I would have said, okay, that's great. I mean, the guy had a heart shaped into shaved his chest hair into a heart in his chest. He looked ridiculous. But, there were certain guys, when you think back, it's like you didn't see him coming, but then you can kind of pinpoint when they got big. Like, you look at Stone Cold Steve Austin, for instance. That wasn't lightning in a bottle. That was like a real gradual buildup, almost like into a giant snowball you'd see on the cartoons. You know what I'm saying? Where, I think his first big thing was, Austin 3:16 says, I do whoop your ass. And it was like, that's interesting. Okay, let's see what you got. And then he has that match against Bret Hart in the Survivor Series, and he's throwing those vignettes with the barking dogs in the background and stuff like that. And you started to see they were onto something with him. And then you had WrestleMania 13, and boom, he's off and running. He's shot out of that cannon. So those were kind of like those three big points where you kind of saw, okay, this is where he's headed. And you look at The Rock, for instance. To me, I didn't see The Rock become The Rock until it was like one episode of Raw where he gets in the ring with the microphone and literally he had the crowd in his hand. But what's funny is that, does The Rock happen without Stone Cold? Because if you look about it, Stone Cold Steve Austin has this progression. The Rock didn't have that kind of progression. He just got shot out of a cannon and it was off and running. And another one, you look at John Cena, for instance. I mean, that was a real slow, gradual buildup if you think about it, because he pops up right around 2002. And he doesn't become the franchise, so to speak. I want to say till about 06 or 07.
Correct. Till he shows up on Raw during the draft.
And if you look at those poignant moments where John Cena takes it to that next level, the way Austin did with Austin 3:16, the Survivor Series build-up, and then finally WrestleMania 13. I would say with Cena, I think the first thing was probably his feud with Kurt Angle. That really showed, how what's the word I'm looking for? I guess where that character can almost just be taken into so many different contexts. And then from there, he has that bloodbath against JBL. And then from there, we're off and running. So it's hard to tell, really, if you think about it, until, they always say, hindsight's 2020. It's hard to tell where your next superstar is coming from. And I know WWE uses the term superstar for, the crumbs under the table at catering. But to me, a superstar is your Austin, is your Rock, is your John Cena, for instance. And you never know where your next one's going to come from. I'll tell you right now, Mustafa Ali is not your next one.
No, not at all.
I mean, honestly, there's nobody on the roster right now I could see becoming that. And it was interesting where I thought about it. And I think, maybe that's what Vince wants. Maybe he just wants a roster full of okay guys that he can control and replace whenever he wants to. Like we said, a band of interchangeable parts. Because if you think about it, is there anybody right now on this roster where if they left tomorrow, the effect would be felt?
I'm looking over this pay-per-view card, and no, there's literally nobody. Even when Roman went out for 6 months, it didn't change anything.
If you look at it, when WCW picked up Hall and Nash, you felt that effect real quick. Like that week, you felt like you knew there was a big void when those two left. That was a huge void. And on the other side of things, when Benoit, Malenko, Guerrero, and Saturn left WCW, you felt that void right away. When Hogan left WWE the first time back in 92, or rather 94, I'm sorry, 93, you felt that void right away when Hogan was gone. When Savage left, you felt that void right away. And I think even when Cena left, you're still feeling that void with Cena gone. And I think you're at a point now where I really have to question that there's really nobody I can think of where if they left tomorrow, I don't think we'd give a shit. If Rollins and Ambrose both left tomorrow and showed up on AEW at the end of this month, would anybody really give a shit as far as WWE is concerned?
No, the wheels just keep on going, and it'd be just another day in the machine.
I think AEW would obviously benefit from it. They need all the star power they can get. But ultimately, I think Vince has created a situation where I think you're going to have a proverbial glass ceiling, so to speak, now, where your biggest star in the company, if you think about it, is Roman Reigns. How big is he?
He doesn't even seem that big anymore. And I don't know if it's because he's on SmackDown, and it's just that perception that SmackDown is a B show versus Raw. But even Roman on SmackDown, it's like he's just another guy.
But that's my thing. I feel like the entire roster is just another guy. Like there's nobody out there that's above the roster. Like if you look at your Mount Rushmore of the WWE, right? It's just wrestlers only. We're not putting Vince on there, obviously. It's Hogan, it's Austin, it's The Rock, and it's Cena. And why do I put those four up there? Because those four stood head and shoulders above everybody else. When they left, you felt it. But those weren't the only ones. Like I said, when Savage left, you felt it. When Taker was off TV, I believe that was in 99 and 2000, you felt it. I think, when Hall and Nash showed up on WCW, WWE, you just saw a huge hole right in the middle of their programming, right then and there, right or wrong.
Correct.
When Hall shows up on Nitro, everyone flips that channel, and they didn't turn back again for 83 weeks. So that was a huge void. When Austin went down with that neck injury, when Rikishi ran him over for the people, Had Rock not been as big as he was, and had Foley not been as big as he was, and had Triple H not become the heel that he became, you would have felt that void big time. The Rock, in a lot of senses, basically saved the WWE. I wouldn't say save it, but think about it. Austin goes down in what, November of 99?
Correct.
He pops up again in what? I think it was what, January of 2000? No, I'm sorry, 2001.
2000, yeah.
So this is right in the middle of the war with WCW. If Austin goes down and The Rock isn't around, I can guarantee you would have seen a shift in those ratings real quick. You know, The Rock and Triple H and Foley really kind of saved the day, so to speak, as far as the product went. You know, it was Foley becoming Foley, The Rock really just taking off to the moon, and Triple H really carrying the show. And I've never been a huge Triple H fan, you know, but he really was that heel that you needed back then. You know, now if you look at it, I can't think. If Rollins, Roman, Finn Balor, and Joe disappear tomorrow, you're not going to see a difference in the program. How long was Samoa Joe out for when he got injured last?
Let's see. He's missed, I would say, in 3 years on the main roster, he's missed maybe a year, half that time.
Well, think about it. Him, Kevin Owens, and Bray Wyatt were out together at the same time.
And Sami Zayn.
Yeah. And then Daniel Bryan, if you think about it. Changed. You didn't feel those effects. And I think that's almost what Vince has tried to do. You're kind of at a point right now where there's nobody really bigger than the product, so to speak, and there's nobody who could get injured or out where it would really affect the product. And I think slowly that might have been the whole entire purpose of NXT, where to create these interchangeable parts where if one goes down, hey, next man up. You know, and I think maybe we've seen out of John Cena your last true superstar. You know, because if you just do the math on it, you know, if you want to go back to the territory days, from Bruno to Hogan, Bruno retires in 1980. Hogan pops up in 84. You're talking 4 years. Hogan has his dribble down effect, which in turn creates Savage and Ted DiBiase and guys like that, which is something you generally see during a peak era in wrestling when you have a guy on top like that. So from Bruno to Hogan, you're talking 4 years. Your next megastar is Austin. Hogan leaves in what, 93? So 93 to 97, 4 years. The Rock really comes up about a year after Austin does. That was just an anomaly if you think about it. And figure Austin leaves in what, 02, and The Rock leaves as a full-time competitor in what, around 03?
Yeah.
Cena pops up and becomes Cena in what, 06, 07? You're talking a 3-year period. So by now, mathematically, we should have found someone.
In 10 years, yeah. In 12 years, yeah. But unfortunately, let's just say it's not your father's WWE anymore.
Yeah, I think we're at a point now where you're not going to get your big mega breakout star. And let's just say AEW hits it big. And let's say Kenny Omega becomes the next breakout star in wrestling. What's going to stop Vince from just throwing a shitload of money at him? There comes a point, you know, $1 Million Man said it, everybody has a price. And yeah, you know what, when you're a guy in your mid-30s and you got a family to support and you're in a business that you kind of want to get out of at a certain point, so you're not like, you know, hobbling around like a 90-year-old man by the time you're 50. I mean, let's look at Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle does not look his age. Kurt Angle to me looks like a 70-year-old man, right or wrong?
Yeah, he moves like a 70-year-old man, yeah.
You know, so if you're Kenny Omega and you're becoming that mixed major star and Vince calls you up and he says, hey, listen, I'll give you a 5-year deal, $10 million a year. You think there's any chance whatsoever Kenny Omega's turning that money down?
It would be stupid not to. So I'm the biggest WWE mark, if you will, and I'm just at a loss of words when it comes to them. I really am.
You know what it reminds me of? Remember the old The old wrestling games where you have like create a character, and when you were making the moves, it would show two guys that looked exactly alike, and you were doing the moves, just showing what it would look like. That's what watching WWE is now. It's a
It's still like that with the games.
Is it still like that? And that's what you have now. It's like a video game. Everybody looks alike. Everybody acts alike. Everybody wrestles alike. Occasionally, you have a cruiserweight that jumps in there and he does one or two cute little flying moves. Does nothing for me, you know. And I think we're at a point now where that's what we have. And you know what? I really hope AEW becomes big because God knows we need AEW right now more than ever. Not just for the business, for us as fans, we need AEW. We really need AEW to succeed as a fan. Because I'll be honest with you, I have no reason to watch Raw SmackDown this week. Do you?
This coming week, there's nothing that interests me. Usually I'm upset when I have to work on a Monday because I'm missing Raw, and there's nothing I'm worried about missing. It's just there's no words. I'm struggling to find words to describe it. It's so bad.
Right, and that's my thing. You know, we're at a point now where there's no must-watch TV as far as wrestling goes. And like I said, we need AEW just based on that, if you think about it. You know, as a fan, we just need AEW. And again, man, I really hope AEW succeeds just for us, just for our sanity at this point.
Well, 3 weeks, we find out what AEW is going to bring to the table because it's 3 weeks from tonight, actually, is Double or Nothing.
You know, I'll be watching it.
So I think we're right about at a time off. As always, it's been great talking to you. Go to willyousstoppodcast.com. Ask us questions. Visit us on social media. Anything else?
I'm good if you're good, my friend.
We'll be back next Sunday, guys. Keep on listening. Keep on finding us on social media. As usual, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Avi. Any questions, hit us up.
We'll see you guys next week.